Mike, just how much jam do you like on your hot buttered scones?
I'm intrigued and disgusted.
Oh, I'm honored you're intrigued, though. They're so good.
Actually, I find scones to be very dry.
But with jam and with hot butter, come on. They looked amazing on the show.
I do tend to enjoy a gluten-free scone, of all things.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine. Today we are talking about Season 6, Episode 18, Inquisition. Very excited about this. Mike, it is a very big day in the K&M Empire world because it is the birthday of our Chancellor Jen, the person who really holds the reins to this whole world. Happy birthday, Jen.
Yeah, we enjoy everyone's comments. We enjoy the discourse on the channel, but nothing is real until Chancellor Jen watches the episode. And it usually happens a good 4 to 6 days after we record it, when I've already forgotten what we did or said, and she comes home wanting to have, this is the cutest thing, Keith. It's one of just many traits we could just laud today with CEO Jen, but Chancellor Jen. She, 6 days, she doesn't just like say, hey, I listened to the episode. She wants to have a conversation about it, and it's just lovely.
And why am I not a part of this? That's what I want to know.
Because it's days later, and you forget what we've done moments later.
Oh, I don't know what we're doing while we're doing it.
That's not true, though. Don't you play coy. She texts, and you guys talk about it, and I don't engage in that text, usually. Occasionally.
Well, we're on a lot of threads that you don't engage in, so...
Boundaries,
well, anyway. Boundaries. Well, happy birthday to Jen.
Yes, we love you.
This is going to be a really fun episode. Lots of stuff happening.
Yeah.
But Mike, he's got a hard out. So
I don't. It's a softer out, but still, we're still going to go quickly.
Oh, it's a soft out.
Yeah, we are, so, the dog, if those who have, Cadet Ellie, who is the new kind of newest addition to the family.
Sure.
Growing fast, lovely dog, really blossoming and learning so many things. She's a tick magnet.
Yeah, oh my God.
So I've been getting over my really absurd fear of insects, having to like navigate getting those off of her.
Do not mention ticks to Jillian,
yeah.
My God.
I've had to force, because CEO Jen is closing a show this weekend, so I've been in charge of that department, and it's been, I've been working through some things. Anyway, but, you know, she's getting a lot more freedom in the house and things, and when we go away, I have been building her to be staying home for longer and longer time, but, you know, she really likes engaging with other dogs, and we've been paying a buttload of money to send her to doggy daycare different times and stuff. So I wanted to explore some options closer to home. You know, people who do Rover, and for like $30 a day will watch your dog, and they have big backyards and stuff like that. So we're meeting this really nice lady who lives like 2 blocks away.
Oh, wow.
Who, for like very little money, will watch the dog if we're away for the day or something. So we're going to have a little a meet and greet today at like 1:15.
Oh,
so
nice.
we should be okay.
That's exciting. Yeah. Well, we don't have a doggy daycare for Pretzel, but
man, wouldn't that be the easiest
gig
of all time? Yeah.
She doesn't need it. Well, anyway. All right, so let's talk about last week's episode, Wrongs Darker Than Death or Night. And let us read the Patron comments. Mike, if people would want me to read their comment, how would they do that?
Keith, one of the greatest things about this channel, the most validation we've ever received, for me at least, is that people write in, because I try to get a live stream of me watching every episode of Deep Space Nine since Season 1, Episode 1, and have done so. They're not always live, though. Sometimes I have to can them, but we have captured every one, and you can see them all at patreon.com/KNM. But since we started the streams, people will write in saying, XYZ is my favorite episode, please do a stream, please do a stream. And then when I do a stream, people show up, and it's really...
It's kind of amazing.
It's amazing and very uncomfortable and awesome and all the things. because I'm being watched just watching, and I feel like I have to say something profound, but at the same time don't want to say anything because I get wrapped up in the last few.
But also shut your mouth and pay attention. Like,
well,
it's a
you
whole
would appreciate
thing.
the last few, Keith, because when I'm into it, it's really just crickets, and the chat goes silent, and we're all just watching this show together. It's very cool.
But that's okay.
Yes,
yes. In neurodivergent world, we call that parallel play, and that's great.
Well, bonobos do parallel play too, but it's a completely different thing. I just watched the YouTube. It's bizarre. I'm sorry I brought it up. You can, at patreon.com, if you become a patron for the low price of at least $1, but let me tell you, you could go more.
More is fine.
Right? And you can pip and pop. I know some people will duck out for a few months and then come back. It's wonderful.
Pip and pop?
Keith and I are, it's actually a really beautiful set of boundaries, soft and lovely. Anyway, we read your comments if you donate, and if you say something really profound on the YouTube, sometimes Keith tosses that in there too. So there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm gonna stop talking.
Yeah, what I was looking for was a link.
Yeah.
But
well, bonobos, of all the monkey species, I'm gonna follow this thread now since I started it.
Right.
Of all the great apes, not all the monkeys, of all the great apes, they're the only ones who do this type of play. It's non-sexual genital rubbing, so it's not to like procreate or to have sexual gratification, but they rub their genitals against each other as a form of play. So as where some people might podcast for 3 hours, the bonobos, male to male, female to sex doesn't really play in, they rub their genitals against one another's. And they call it, well, we're going to call it parallel play because Keith used that term and I think it's funny.
Would you kind of start over, or
no? I found it interesting. It was in nature. It was a thing. It was a YouTube I was watching.
Okay, all right, that's fine. That's interesting. It's science. It's nature. My question is, what did you type into the YouTube search to find this video?
I follow this guy. I wish I could remember his name, but he has like a difficult handle. But he is like sort of a savant when it comes to learning languages. He can become fluent in a crazy language in days, right? So to challenge himself, he wanted to learn ape communication. So he went to one of the primate preserves, and was trying to learn their communication in a single day. And then the next day, they put him in with some primates, and he was like communicating. And then they started there's this one group started like rubbing gents together, and the zookeeper explained to him what was happening because he was like, what is that? And
okay, Joshua Cronin says.
I love the spool of thread you just give me, right? Some people would say, I'm going to intercept and divert. Not Keith.
Give a man enough rope. Remember from Will Rogers' Follies?
Yep.
Give a man enough rope, and he can hang himself or not. That is the
or
choice
rub
that
his
he has
genitals
got.
on you. Non-sexually.
Joshua Cronin, who has regrets for being involved in this, says, this is about wrongs darker than death or night. This is a pretty deep episode of discovery for Kira. I like the background story building, showing Ducat being what he is and always was. I give it 81 self-sealing stem bolts. Jason Moe says, sorry guys, but this episode is nearly as underrated as Lady Bird Johnson's beautiful bottom.
Thank you for the callback, Jason.
Because I don't remember what happens. I'm just like, that's an amazing sentence. I don't know why, but it's an amazing.
Well, what if bonobo play, but Mike does a riff on Lady Bird Johnson's Sweet A.
So LBJ's bonobo play for the USA.
Back when the country had ideals, Keith.
Anyway, I think this episode introduces some really complex and interesting character development for Kira. And I also just love stuff like this, where the characters go back in time and get to interact with their own parents and themselves as kids. I'm chalking it up to my childhood obsession with the first Back to the Future movie. Classic. Jillian just texted, what the hell is going on down there? That's fair.
Yeah.
Fair. Yeah, I mean, who didn't have an obsession with Back to the Future?
There should be a whole other podcast that is just someone set up upstairs of both of our houses recording ambient, like just random things heard coming up the stairs.
Just like half hearing one half of a conversation through a floor.
And then they try to interpret what we were talking about. That would be a hell of a show.
I mean, it would be really something. Yeah. Anyway, Jason Moe desperately tries to get a word in edgewise and says, I award 90 STEM bolts to this episode of Deep Space Nine. I award 92 STEM bolts after an exhaustive Google image search to Lady Bird Johnson's scrumptious derriere. That one caught me by surprise. Oh man, I should really read this ahead of time. Brian from Video Game Drive-By says, Hi guys, my favorite part of this channel is Mike enjoying this show for the first time. We had lots to talk about our spoiler rant, which maybe went a little hard last week, but you know, I gotta be me. Yes, more of the good kind of filler. It doesn't necessarily move the big pieces forward but it gives us more of a Kira faces her demons story. Some of the storytelling beats to get us to the meat are a bit rushed, but it makes sense. This is a rough episode for me at times. I don't always have the best relationship with my parents, and I often hear, well, it's your parents, you can't just not be around them. But this episode basically screams my reaction to them. Parents do not get a pass just because they are parents. But on the flip side, sometimes even the worst thing a parent might do have reasons behind them. I should call my parents. Ugh, this is all your fault! I give it another 85 STEM bolts. Also, I loved Inspector Gadget as a kid, later became a huge fan of Get Smart. Don Adams was Inspector Gadget. Yeah, man, I mean, to get like real about like relationship with parents, I mean, is that not what our journey is as we go into adulthood, re-examining our relationship with our parents? And honestly, I have been on all sides of that fence. I have taken the entire journey, and it's I think all of those viewpoints are completely valid and true at the same time. Yeah, it's a weird. I mean, I'll speak for my intro to therapy, because I think many people have the experience where you start psychotherapy, you think you're going to talk about your stuff, but you end up talking about your parents for like almost 6 months or a year. Yeah. And it was interesting because for a while it was dissecting all the reasons to be angry at them, right? Yep. And then you kind of come around a corner and start to realize, well, at the same time, there's some grace to be had because they're just human beings making it up as they go along. Now, I'm speaking about my parents. Obviously, different traumas and different experiences might adjust the levels of grace that you're able to give. But it's fascinating, yes. Well, and I think I think you described the journey, at least for me, really accurately, because you first have to disentangle what you were told, what you needed to think as a kid with the reality of it, and you have to sort of face the reality of all the things that happened. And then and that is an essential part of growing up in the process, is to give that whatever traumas you faced, everybody faces some, to give them the weight and the air and the space that they deserve, and you need to feel that, you need to go through that. I think that's essential. And then adding to that, not replacing that, but adding to that, like you said, the humanity, the idea that your parents are just people too, and even if the best they could wasn't always as great as you want it to be, it might have been the best they could, and having those things coexist at the same time, I think, is where we get to health. But everybody wants you to skip the middle part there. Your parents definitely want you to skip right to the and at the same time, and I think end. The point here that our dear patron is making is that often you're fed your parents get carte blanche, right? They get a blanket pardon because they're your parents. And that's not generally the case, because as Keith just mentioned, we talk about good faith a lot. You know, a lot of that grace comes from, were your parents doing the best they can? Because the truth be told, a lot aren't doing the best they can. They're doing the bare minimum or not, or acting out of narcissism or selfishness. And even if they were doing the best they can, if it wasn't good enough, it's still true. It's still true that it wasn't good enough. Like, and that these are not mutually exclusive truths. They can be true at the same time, and that is. True wisdom is allowing those things to coexist. Now, does other Trek, because, you know, looking back at Bashir, looking back at Kira, looking at Worf, looking at a bunch of Dukat,
Garrick. We've dealt with a lot of parental trauma and issues, and does other Trek do that?
Yeah, to some extent. I think Deep Space Nine goes deeper and harder than most of the other series, but I mean, that is one of the essential journeys of life, right? Like who is more, who defines who we are, what we want, what we feel more than our parents do? If we had the access to our parents, which not everybody does.
Well, no joke. Sorry, we can get back on the episode in a minute, but no joke. One of the things I think about a lot, actually, that in a weird kind of tapestry of fiction, production cuts and decisions made in the writing room and at the sort of studio level also affect the lore of certain characters. I constantly come back to Molly O'Brien and new baby O'Brien, whose name escapes me, because due to budget and such, they write them off the space station very often. So so Miles' children are growing up without a father in a large extent, which will have ramifications for human beings down the road that we sort of are just doing as necessity, but is important.
Look, our parents all have explanations for why they were absent, and O'Brien's been like, hey, budget.
Yeah, budget and torture, you know what I mean?
I couldn't be much of a dad because of budget. It's not my fault. Production, talk to Paramount.
Yeah, really.
All right. So Quark's Bar says, we at Quark's fully support the Lava Short watch-along endeavor. You can't put a price on two grown men weeping to uke music. Nor should you. It is, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. Mike tried to get me to watch it ahead of time. Like, no, I'm going to watch it live.
Me and Jen did.
Live
Jen was playing
guys.
along with her ukulele, and I was just silently. I would have cried, but she's not great at the ukulele.
Happy birthday!
I'm just kidding, babe. You did great.
I would have cried, but she's not great. Wow!
That was on purpose.
Wow. Hope you brought some cake with that. Kevin Miles says, O'Brien may suffer, but Kira gets tortured. They once tried to make her think she was a Cardassian. Her past two relationships fizzled. For the most of her life, she was considered a terrorist. And now she finds that her mother did not die in the mines, but was a concubine of Dukat. What else must she go through? It was brought up during your show. Why didn't she let Dukat blow up and just save her mother? In the theory of time travel, is where there are fixed points in time. This is why you can't go back and save Lincoln and Kennedy from the assassin's bullet or go back and kill Hitler. This is the same here. If she blew up Dukat, her family's privileges would have ended, and they would have probably been executed. If they were killed, there would be no Kira to go back in time to blow up Dukat. It is the paradox of killing your grandfather. If you killed your grandfather, you would not be born and to go back in time to kill your grandfather. I don't know why you would want to kill your grandfather in the first place. You don't know my grandfather. Does your head hurt yet? I love
the paradox of that, though, the nonsensicality of that is that, and I deal with that, and I think that goes back to the way to explain away what I'm going to say is that, okay, cool, great, that makes sense that there are these fixed points that cannot be altered, but
right.
Upon whose agency, right? Like what or whom is making that protection, right? Like,
well, but the way this works, there's no like agency as a part of it. Like you just if you prevent yourself from being born, it's just math.
Right. So let's say you pull the trigger. What happens? The gun, like an alternate reality takes place in order to protect said thing. But is that being controlled by someone? In this case, Keith postulates it's the wormhole aliens,
right?
The prophets, which I like because Mike's need for having a period at the end of the sentence tells me who's creating that agency.
Yeah, well, that is true. Like it is impossible, but what is the mechanism that makes it impossible?
Right. We talked about Back to the Future 1. The whole sort of vibe of that movie is don't do it. You can influence the future. Here, if we're saying she couldn't have done it, right? Even if she wanted to, something must have stopped her from doing it. If it wasn't her own decision.
Yeah.
Or what made her have the decision?
Look, Star Trek time travel rules are whatever they need to be for this episode.
Yeah, we'll just create an agency.
Exactly. Finish. Kevin finishes, I love a good time travel episode and the questions they raise. 94 self-sealing stem bolts. Carl Fisher says, I've never been a great fan of this episode. The idea that no one told Kira in all these years that her mother was a very close friend of Gul Dukat, and that she would end up in the exact same space station and serve as the executive officer always seemed too convenient. It took Dukat 6 seasons to tell Kira that he was the lover of her mother. Somewhere in his ego, he would have used this info long before to try to gain something.
I think I brought that up.
I think you did, and I agree. I agree completely. Like I don't, and we'll get into this a little bit with YouTube viewers' idea. It doesn't bump me that Kira would end up there, but it does bump me that Dukat would not be like pulling that out the first time he's mildly annoyed at Kira.
Correct. That was my point. His narcissism would have wanted him to revel in that.
He would
way too long,
100%. Unless, and as gross as it is, he was trying to is trying to get with Kira, and it doesn't usually help your chances to say I was your mom's lover too.
I definitely didn't say that last episode and had to cut it out of the episode because it was so gross.
Yeah, well, now it's back in, baby.
I think I might have used a turn of phrase that was less appropriate.
Yes, I believe you said it in the grossest possible way. So that's why you had to cut it. All right, so Hibernation Pod says, never once doubted Mike's quickness and smart. Hibernation Pod, there's nobody out there who has our back more on protecting spoilers than Hibernation Pod. We were discussing doing back-to-back watch-alongs of this episode and next episode, and everybody universally agreed, don't do that.
So here's the next question then, everybody, since we're allowing you to weigh in. I am going to California for work, not this... When is this going to air today? So not next week, but the following week, right? The week...
Okay.
So the question would be, do we hold off and air episode 19 upon my return? Or do we take just the week I'm away off? So that would be a hard stop after 19 for a week.
Oh, so we shoot and release 19 next week normally,
and then
take a week off.
Yeah, or we take next week off and air 19 like in the week I'm gone. Either way, I guess. Yeah.
So it doesn't change our shooting schedule. It's just when do we drop it?
Yeah. Like where's the better act break? I guess.
Oh, that's true. Good question. I don't know. Well, it doesn't change I don't care because it doesn't change my workflow. We're still recording next week anyway.
Yeah, we'll still do the watch along next week, so the question becomes key.
Oh, so then I would think let's drop it.
Yeah,
because that way watch along reaction.
Cool. All right.
Anyway, Hibernation Pod is like, yes, 18 and 19 is a lot, too much to absorb in one shot. Agreed. Solved it. Mysterious Anne says, I started watching Deep Space Nine when I was in grad school, and Spike TV ran a block of Star Trek episodes midday every weekday. I even skipped a few classes because I was too invested in an episode to tear myself away. This episode was one of those, and I ended up using it as a source of a paper for a class I skipped. It changed me, and I think of it every time I'm tempted to think I clearly know the right way to survive under occupation, in exile, or under authoritarian rule. I mean, fascinating that this sort of polarizing episode, Mysterious Anne literally did a grad school paper on it. Do you still have it? Can we read it? That would be cool. Keith brought up the question of Kira Maru's agency and how Kira Nerys may be underestimating the danger her mother and family was in if Maru didn't comply. Kira Taban's message praying that Maru finds some kindness and peace in this life she'd been forced into is pure grace and really remarkable. Agreed. When I watch this episode, I think about the people I've gotten to know who have lived under similar conditions, and the non-choice choices, the terrible choices they have faced. I also think about all those stories about exile and occupation in the Bible, because that's on my mind a lot these days. Yeah, I mean, Mysterious Anne fighting the good fight, trying to help people in dark places and times, especially now closer to home than we have been used to. Do you have anything?
I'll let you finish before I interrupt, because
Anne continues, Major Kira being willing to kill her mother, then deciding not to do it, but still being deeply angry and hurt, all makes sense for her character, and the arc she seems to have been on from the beginning. Her black and white way of relating to the world is still there, but facing more and more challenges. This episode gets 90 stem bolts from me and the paper written in 2007 about the Babylonian exile. The mysterious household supports a lava viewing. Also, it's been a long time since I thought about Inspector Gadget. I loved that show.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So, often I think that sometimes ideas that are too big or too outside the quote-unquote norm, next to normal, if you will, can distance the viewer, right? So yes, trying to empathize with people under occupation, though very prescient and still happening and omnipresent. I've been thinking about this episode really specifically, right, and more common. I look at my mom, right, and I'll just make a quick example. I look at her, and whilst she was not raising her family under occupation, she was raising it under oppression of my dad, who was just kind of like a bear in some ways as a husband, and forced her into traditional sort of marital roles, sex roles, and it's been clear in the 20-some years past him dying, that she will, for the rest of her life, because she's not one that has stuck with any sort of mental health therapy or whatnot, not being able to understand why she stayed with this guy, right? Even though I've been able to work through why I think she did. Obviously, she had children. She didn't have any financial income. She was sort of trapped. She was on an island. She was, if you will, doing what was best for us because we would be provided for better, So she was, I guess you could say in some ways, and the analogy is she wasn't under occupation, right?
Well, there are gradations.
Yes, right.
And
nonetheless,
occupation is not binary either.
Yeah, and it's lest I judge her, and yes, in some ways I'm angry because I have to live in the aftermath of that, right? Instead of being able to really enjoy moments with her that I think she should be appreciating with her grandkids, with us, she's so trapped in a lot of this trauma that it frustrates me, and it does bring me to anger at times, which is difficult because she doesn't deserve my ire, but you can understand the frustration. So anyway, yeah, that's just kind of the analogy I wanted to bring to Anne's point. As always, Anne, food for thought. Also, just to drop a teaser, the Mysterious Household is working on kind of a special project that Keith and I are really excited about, and hopefully we'll have something to talk about. No pressure, but we're fans, and we're just happy that
I'm gonna be chatting with the Mysterious Walter on Sunday.
That's awesome. So best of luck and congrats to you guys. Keith will be the first to tell you, picking a project and following through is like one of the great joys of life.
It genuinely is. But yeah, I mean, and talking about the gradations to occupation, I think about my mother, right? And like, she did not have the situation that your mother did, but the society that she grew up in also put limitations on her. I mean, she's brilliant and incredibly ambitious and hardworking, but when she came out of school, the only occupations allowed to her as a woman was teacher or nurse. So she became a very good teacher. She became a very high-level teacher and did extraordinary things. But had she had the option to do more than that, I think she probably would have. And I know that she looks back on it today wishing that she had been born in a different generation where she had more options. And that also, too. And that, not for the least of which, I'm flying Ukraine colors behind me under the much more aggressive, darker occupation right now. So
yeah, I went to adjudicate a high school production of Head Over Heels last night. And Head Over Heels is a musical based on the music of the Go-Go's that, to really boil it down, explores themes of gender fluidity, gender identity, all kinds of things within a camp structure. But at the same time, normally what I wanted to praise in my kind of viewing was how this generation growing up, how easily they're able to discuss these themes, which would have been very difficult for us when we were young. So that shows great progress. But at the same time, what I was struck with was their bravery, because in the face of what's kind of going on in the new sort of regime of how we're talking about trans human beings
flat and out under attack.
Yes. It really kind of disheartened me that I had to discuss bravery or had to contemplate bravery.
Right. How did that become?
Yeah.
So brave. Yeah.
But congratulations to that school. It's I hesitate to mention it, but it was to allow them to program that was really kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. God. We're here for our trans community here on this show.
And we're here for art, right? Like, I think that it can seem trivial at times. The Academy Awards, Conan O'Brien said something really spectacular, and he just said that, as trivial sometimes when these big ideas and these big sort of things are happening in the world, that art starts to seem trivial because more important things are happening, but that's not the case. Art is always important. That expression is always important. Don't let it get snuffed out. Be a part of it.
Well, and it is always going to be the first level of resistance. And it is always going to be, it is the type of way to resist that, especially with sci-fi, because you're able to use metaphor, you can resist in any level of oppression through art. And I think that there's something very valuable about that. Okay, so YouTube viewer says, replying to one of my problems with the kids about the conceptual idea that they almost made this episode about the sort of ghost children being pulled out of time. YouTube viewer says the writers didn't know how to rescue the ghost children lost in time, which was my assertion. That's pretty easy. The emissary uses the orb of time and calls on the prophets to save them. You could even toss in a bit of attempted Wraith interference just to add some spice on the episode. Boom. Yes and no. I think that is the mechanism by which we could save these ghost children. The question is, though, it doesn't solve the problem. What do you do with these children? You save them, but what does save them look like, right? Do you pull them into our timeline and pull them away from their families? Do you transport them off of Terek Nor and put them somewhere else within their timeline? What does that do to our timeline? Because you're dealing with time travel. I think you've identified a good lever to pull, but we still don't have a solution as to what to do with them. Anyway, YouTube continues. This is my least favorite episode of Deep Space Nine.
Interesting.
I'm okay with watching dark and gritty things, but I want to be upfront that this is a dark and gritty show. I like Scooby-Doo, and I like the movies Seven and Silence of the Lambs. I do not want to see a hybrid of Silence of the Lambs where Scooby and Shaggy and Velma go after a brutal serial killer. I am okay watching Star Trek, and I am okay watching A Handmaid's Tale, but I do not want to mix Handmaid's Tale with Star Trek. Star Trek is supposed to be optimistic and heroic. The tonal shift here is very jarring. I think it's a really interesting point, although I disagree. In no surprise, I think Star Trek, what makes Star Trek Star Trek is not just being optimistic and heroic. And therefore the absence of the darkness, the absence of the Handmaid's Tale. What makes Star Trek is approaching that problem from an optimistic and heroic place. Like trying to solve the Handmaid's Tale, because we're right in the middle of it, right? And so what you look at, Picard didn't exist in a world where there weren't Handmaid's Tale situations. Picard went and used the optimistic, idealistic, heroic worldview to try and solve that problem. So I don't think it's a tonal shift. It's just, how do we try to solve that as opposed to that doesn't exist?
Yeah, the thread they're trying to what am I trying to say? The needle they're trying to thread, that I think, they're successful more than not, and I commend them for the attempt, is to find the balance between optimism, pure optimism or idealism, and some other things which crush optimism. So make you think that being optimistic is naive, right? To think that any sort of hope, and let me tell you, it's easy these days, that any sort of hope or positive outcome is you're being naive to think that. And I think that would destroy it for me because there is no escapism there, right? Then it's just sort of trauma watching. And so trying to thread that needle is, I think, what they're going for, and I think it's successful more than not.
Yeah, you know, that's a good way of putting it, because it's like it's not the absence of darkness, it is the approaching that darkness from a place of integrity. And the optimism is believing that approaching darkness with integrity and morals can have a positive outcome. And I think that's how do you
spin up any drama if we found the utopian society and we are always great like that? And then what stories are we telling?
Right. But also, if there is no light and no integrity and no hope of changing it, then it becomes later Trek, and it's like, oh, that's really depressing.
Yeah. Right.
So I'm with you.
And I think we get into that this episode too, don't we?
Yeah,
we do. Think if the idea is that, like, Starfleet is beyond reproach.
Yeah.
Well, then we have like secret societies, right?
I gotta burn through this because we gotta get to it. Some good stuff here. So anyway, YouTube continues. This is another reason why I do not like this episode, because of the ick factor. This drastically changes my pre-existing notion of Kira Nerys. There are two types of heroes. First, you have the chosen ones who are marked by destiny, and then you have the every man or every woman character who are ordinary people who are forged by extraordinary circumstances. I always assumed Kira Nerys was an every woman heroine. Kira Nerys was not destined to rub elbows with Starfleet captains, Cardassian gulls, and the sky of Bajor. She was forced into that life and adapted. Her strength of will and adaptability to overcome horrific things and came out stronger. The fact that she retains her values and morals throughout the hardship is a central theme of the core optimism inherent to all pre-Kurtzman Star Trek shows. Yeah, okay, you said it better than I did. If Dukat is not just having sex with Kira Maru, but made her a full mistress, this means Kira Nerys was always destined to be entwined with huge events. And this also kind of makes Bajoran prophets a bit of jerks, and it reeks of predestination. Okay. I don't think it means that she was destined to be in this position, and the reason why I think that is Kira didn't seem to have acquired any of her advantages to get her into this position because that happened. She didn't even know that happened. I don't think there's any evidence that Dukat pulled any levers to give Kira that power, to give Kira that situation, other than the fact that she, as a result of this episode, got out of the camps and got to eat. So possibly there's that. However, if that were true, Dukat had mistresses for 50 years.
Yeah, we spent that whole away mission discussing.
He probably fathered tons of other kids all over the place. And so that Ziel and Kira are just two, and none of them were destined and yet had the same sort of a thing. Anyway, interesting discussion here about not liking predestination, and it's a whole other topic we don't have time for, but I think it's very interesting about whether or not things are predetermined, and if they are, do you really have morals? Good question. You should bring that up at some point when we have more time, because my brother, who is a scientist...
I think a lot of people are saying... Oh, sorry, finish your thought.
Oh, my brother, who is a scientist, he real bright, he has the theory that literally everything is completely predetermined because everything is math, which I don't think you would like that worldview. Anyway, Mike, go ahead.
I don't know how I feel about that either. Actually, I don't like to think about it. I think the sin of this episode, and I think we can all agree upon it, is that it feels a little retconny, because it just things we've built with Dukat, and yes, it reaffirms that everything he says is a story and there's a theatricality to it, and you can only take it as a performative. Everything he does is as heartfelt as it may seem, or as much as you want to let him off the hook, there's a performative quality to it, and it's never to be trusted. So that all tracks. But there does feel like we had those episodes where we went to find Ziel's mom and the whole thing with Kira. Like, it just felt a little retconny, and I think we were all kind of expressing different shades of that.
Yeah, different shades of that. And also, like, because it's so dark, it sort of it forces us to sort of think through the fact that this darkness exists in this world, which we've had countless examples of by this point. Anyway, YouTube finishes. I award this episode 0 stem bolts, and may the prophets have mercy on the writing team for this episode.
So we got to be careful with our zeros and hundreds, guys, because you know that they get tossed out. We toss out the highest and the lowest when we're averaging up. So no, I'm just kidding. We don't actually do any of that.
We don't do math.
We say it one time and then forget it. Do you even put it in the spreadsheet anymore?
I mean, okay, so I do, but then my computer updates and reboots before I save it. So no. then I would have to go back and watch our episode again to find out what we said.
See, bigger channels, right? Bigger channels have people who have like whole Discord servers and things and websites where they're tracking all of this kind of data. No.
Yeah. Star Trek: The Next Conversation has somebody who does their stats for them.
Yeah, this is all vibes. We go back to we think about old episodes. It's like, yeah, I think I recall liking that.
Great. All right. So JD says, Keith, you have to learn to open yourself to more feels. It's a wonderful and cathartic thing. And yeah, lava is fantastic. Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I think what I look for,
saying no.
What I look for in my content is comfort, because I have all the feels already. And so I'm usually looking for comfort. He says, damn, shots fired. I'm not even around to defend myself. I have no idea what shots we fired.
But we gave him a shout out at the end of the episode previous. So, you take some, you win some, you lose some.
Anyway, sorry, we love you. I don't remember exactly what I said. Inspector Gadget was the GOAT. He also agrees take a week off. It'd be better for 19. So this episode falls into the same area as Far Beyond the Stars. Does Kira have agency? Did events play out like that originally? It's all tough to answer and not really vital to the story. Fair. Mike's orb. Behind? I don't know. It's the orb of floating blue stuff, which says...
The wrong answer. The right answer was just make it up, JD. We would have gone with it.
No. The right answer is JD doesn't know because he didn't open it because he was afraid of what world he'd be transported into.
Right now, it's the orb of needs new batteries.
Most of my orbs are that. In the books, he says, it established that Dukat is about 70 years old in season 1. That makes a lot of sense. I like that. Keith, what Kira's dad said is they have been returned home and given food, so Kira didn't grow up in the camps and caves. Interesting. I should have known that. I think the writers missed out on not trying to at least make ZL Kira's half-sister.
JD, yeah. CEO Chancellor Jen had called instantly from the car. She was driving home when she was listening. She said the same. She was like, tell Keith he's wrong. She said she grew up at home.
So we have people all over the country excited to tell me that I'm wrong. Fair enough.
Well, I'm always excited to hear you're wrong, so it's...
Yeah, because you're not, you're not paying enough attention to know if I'm wrong. You're just waiting for somebody else who is to tell me that. Yeah. That's great. Yeah, JD's saying it is a missed opportunity not to have ZL be Kira's half-sister. I agree. It's a great character piece that fleshes out Kira and Dukat, but it has some weaknesses. 68 self-sealing stem bolts, and he says to us after our 2 weeks in a row of horrible technical difficulties, for two people more than 10 feet away from each other recording a long-distance podcast, you have one of the best qualities of recording. Last 2 weeks notwithstanding, but thank you. We've worked hard, and so far things seem to be not a disaster, and I'm very happy to find out it might have been your soundboard and not me. All right.
We're having conversations about that. It doesn't mean that it's true, but anyway. Yeah.
I'm taking advantage of what I can. Let's talk about Inquisition, Season 6, Episode 18. Yeah, we're in it. We are right in the meaty center. This aired on April 8th, 1998. The top song, still, All My Life, Casey and JoJo.
All my life, I'll wait for someone like you. Chancellor Jen, happy birthday, I love you. I mean that. I know I'm saying it in a really funny way with reverb, but really kind of mean it. You're the best person I ever met. I love you.
I'm really glad you're not playing the ukulele along with my song.
Actually, she's done well. So the ukulele was a birthday present some years ago. And I think in one of my crappy moods, I said to her, I was like, you don't play it enough. You didn't learn, you wanted this so bad and you never learned. And she did, Keith. I went away on a gig and I came back and she knew how to play the ukulele.
Oh, wow.
Just to spite me. Yeah.
Yeah, you used guilt and she used spite, but now you can listen to uke. So There you go. That's great. The top movie was City of Angels, the Nicolas Cage Meg Ryan film.
One of the darkest rom-coms you're likely to find.
I've never seen it.
Yeah, it's weird. There's a lot of somebody's dead, and then she falls in love with this guy. He's just like a reincarnated angel. I love it. But I do love Meg Ryan.
What was weird and you didn't love on TV tonight?
Nothing. I didn't look it up because
okay,
we're running.
We're running. What was Voyager doing this week? They were off. So this episode deservedly got the whole night to itself. And it was directed by Michael Dorn, who last directed In the Cards, and was written by Bradley Thompson and David Weddle. Good stuff. What do you say? We do some trivial stuff. Now, Keith, waste your time.
Yeah, but with what?
With trivial trivia.
Cool.
Okay. So, some interesting stuff here. Sloane was wearing a special rank insignia. Poor Pips with an underline. Which, okay, Pip nerds out there, have we seen that before or after?
Yeah, they call it an underlout.
An underlout?
Get it? Instead of an umlaut, which is above.
Yeah. I know an umlaut.
Actually, umlaut's the two dots, right?
Umlaut is the two dots.
The accent above a vowel is called something else. I'll look it up.
Oh God, I knew this in college.
It was on Jeopardy like 2 nights ago.
It's long gone now. All right, so the idea that Bashir might have been what's that?
A mark above a vowel that indicates a long sound is called a macron.
Macron. Okay, well, there it is. I'd go for a macaron right now.
Macaroon, you mean?
If you're gonna be a proletarian, a dumb American.
A cookie?
Give me a damn cookie! Or a big old chocolate chip cookie!
It sounds good too, to be honest with you.
I'm 100% on board. Yeah. The idea that Bashir might have been a Dominion operative without being aware of it himself was previously used in the episode The Mind's Eye on Next Gen, in which Geordi LaForge is unwittingly brainwashed by the Romulans to carry out an assassination for them, an idea which in turn had been borrowed from the film The Manchurian Candidate. And Keith Trivial Trivia? That's one of the original Next Gen production scripts that I own that Uncle Jim gave to us back at the time. This is not a reproduced one. This is an actual one used on set. And he sent a couple of scripts to my older brother Sean, who we know, who would subsequently go on to work on the show, to help Sean because he wanted to write and submit a script. Because of the open submission we've talked about many times. And so Sean was like, I want to do that. So Jim sent a couple of the actual scripts to use as an example.
That's cool.
So now I have that in Data's Day. Really fun. The holosuite at the end, where Bashir and Sloane have their protracted discussion, was of course borrowed from the Voyager set, because it was a Federation holodeck that they were on. This episode began life as a comic show about bureaucracy and paperwork, or as Bradley Thompson puts it, dealing with the Department of Motor Vehicles on a Sunday. Bashir went to a planet to do something really nice like saving lives of everyone on the planet, but he parked his runabout in orbit, and when he finished doing this wonderful thing, he found out he had been towed, or he had a parking ticket. So he had to go up against the bureaucracy. It was the ultimate genetically engineered human against the ultimate bureaucratic red tape. Thompson and Weddell had the idea to do a show as a humorous version of the 1925 Franz Kafka novel, The Trial. But when they pitched it to Ira Stephen Bear, he immediately reformulated it into an episode involving a covert organization within Starfleet who decided Bashir was a Dominion spy and interrogate him by means of, the episode. It stopped being a romp and became a nightmare. That is a really big swing on the rewrite. Basically, the only commonalities there is it's about Bashir.
In this episode, I feel like almost wants to be an O'Brien Must Suffer episode, right?
It, for sure, but I think the fact of Bashir's story up until this point makes this so satisfying. I would have liked the other episode too, frankly. That would be fun. So, lastly, this is really interesting, and half of me wants to see this, but half of me is also like, Bill Sadler is freaking fantastic, so I wouldn't want to change it. But do you know that they considered Martin Sheen for Sloan? That would have,
Sadler he's from Blade Runner, right? Or like he has a...
I don't know if he was in Blade Runner. We probably know him most from Shawshank.
Right, okay. Yeah, all right.
And a bunch of other things.
He's great.
He's phenomenal in this. But the alternate Martin Sheen version is also very interesting. And also keeping in mind, this is 1998. He would have been just barely Bartletting at the same time as this.
Oh, what a career. I bet you that went into the conversation as to why not to do it.
Well, he would have... he was already a big star before he was Bartlett, but that was the beginning of him re-emerging as a gigant. It might have been a little distracting.
Well, and it's like ostensibly like a semi-heel turn it would have been, so...
Yeah. But so interesting. Other guest stars
I gotta get back to that. I gotta finish The West Wing. I'm so close.
Oh, you definitely gotta finish The West Wing.
Yeah, but it's like, he just left.
It's sad to watch now. But
yeah. It's almost like candy now.
Yeah, it's like this. Yeah. Anyway. So our guest stars this week are Jeffrey Combs as Wayoom, Samantha Mudd as Chandler, Benjamin Brown as Kagan, and of course the aforementioned William Sadler as Sloan. You know who we would never replace with a star debuting an Aaron Sorkin series?
Keith, that's the patrons. We're pressed for time now, so I won't give you the benefit of me mispronouncing your name terribly. But we do have some new folks, I believe.
Really?
So I'd like to shout them out. If I hadn't shouted them out last week, I know Chanel is new, 86 and Company, welcome. A bunch of folks who haven't gotten the love and shout-outs that I generally give.
They deserve.
But thank you to everyone. We'll be back to our regularly scheduled moronic butchering next week. Also, I will highlight, however, since I'm stalling right now...
Oh, wow.
...the Hall of Fame. Because there's some folks that have jumped onto that patron slide as well. It's really kind of humbling to know that some folks have stuck with us for so long. Listen... You hear that? It's not Keith sounding like a robot. So we've put $3 of your dollars to use. Thank you so much. Yes.
Robot. Okay. What do you say? We go into the screening room and get to it. Can't believe people watch this.
No.
All right, so Inquisition. Let's do it. We begin with Bashir hard at work preparing a paper he is presenting at a medical conference. Odo teases him that all medical conferences are always taking place on pleasure planets, to which I'm forced to bring up a true story of what is on my thing. What the hell is that?
Well, one day you'll know.
Okay, well, there, sure. So in my, I can't believe it. I was like, what the hell? So in my real life, I once worked at NYU setting up medical conferences, organizing medical conferences. And let me tell you, everything they're saying is 100% true. The biggest one that I did was organizing a brain surgery conference at the Plaza Hotel.
That's pretty nice. I will say to you, Keith, that in a weird level of synchronicity, as we discuss often, all during COVID, one of the many jobs that I had was to run virtual medical conferences.
Yes, and pressing spacebar on the PowerPoints. I once did that for an internal medicine day, and they spent an entire day pressing spacebar on PowerPoints about farts. Really fun. Just all the different terms. You know the medical term for a fart?
No.
Flatus.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Do you know Jen's family? Speaking of Chancellor Jen, I'm going to bring this up, and she's going to be pissed. So, in her house,
birthday,
fart, growing up, in her house, fart was a curse word. Along the lines of like the F word, S word, all those words, you could not say it. So, there was a replacement word.
Yeah, what's the euphemism? Yes.
TWEEP. Tweep.
Tweep.
Right, which
is a very ladylike.
Yeah, which was so ingrained in their vernacular that since I've known her, she does not say fart. She's only used this word so much so, and her family, like you go to outings, it's bizarre, but so much so that it's completely changed within my vernacular. I know I have now adopted their word because I see them a lot. So it's bizarre. Yeah.
Tweep.
Yeah.
My older brother and his son, they use butt putt.
Far superior.
All right, folks, in the YouTube comments, did your family have a weird euphemism for fart? Put it in the comments.
Wow, awesome.
There it is. So O'Brien arrives in his 1990s kayak suit after having dislocated his shoulder once again. He's done this before, once on Deep Space Nine and once on Next Gen.
He just came from the set of Martin.
He's doing some stand-up in 1992. So he fixes up O'Brien and heads off to bed before he leaves the next morning. He wakes up in his space bed, in his space jammies, with his singular triangular space pillow, and he is exhausted. He packs his bags and says goodbye to his teddy bear. Remember Nog having to retrieve the teddy bear? But then he gets a message from Cisco calling all senior officers to ops. It turns out that Internal Affairs has arrived and is doing an investigation of the Deep Space Nine staff, led by a very lit under the face to make him look super scary, Director Sloan. Yeah, what a great face.
Was Sloan the name of the operative in Blade Runner? Why am I connecting it to Blade Runner?
I don't know. You'll have to look it up. So Sloan says Starfleet intelligence has reason to believe that there is a security breach aboard Deep Space Nine. So they're locking everything down and isolating the senior staff. So much for the medical conference. They're all sent to be confined to their quarters.
The key lighting is great.
The key light, yeah. So good. So in Act 1, you know what? That's probably a Dorn thing. Mm-hmm. Good job, Dorn.
He's like, well, this guy's got such incredible, like,
features.
Skeleture?
Sure.
Bone structure.
Skeletor. He's got amazing Skeletor.
But.
So in Act 1, in his quarters, Bashir tries to order breakfast. Scones and jam. Hot buttered scones and jam.
Where'd our,
Mike makes a sad face because Dorn, after getting the lighting so good on Bill Sadler, forgot to light Act 1 of Deep Space Nine.
All of it. It's all gone. Yeah. Hold on. There's gotta be screenshots.
Oh, no. There we go. Oh no, that's the beginning again.
Let's see. Where were we? Okay, 90s jacket, conference,
Nice jacket.
jammies.
Right, space jammies, space pillow.
Teddy, he's
Space Teddy.
I love that he was just talking to nobody. I need to go through my day and be like, I'm feeling so tired today.
I'm so sleepy.
Oh, Skeletor.
Mm-hmm,
Skeletor. There we go.
Did we do it? Okay.
Hey,
we did it. Oh man, so good, so good. So he orders those delicious scones and jam, but the replicators have been turned off. We don't know why yet. He drops his pen under his couch, but before he can retrieve it, he's escorted to Sloan in the wardroom. And in the wardroom, Sloan greets him warmly.
Keith, what's the thing? I can never remember. I always want to say Occam's razor, but it's not that. It's the thing.
I need more context.
No, it's the thing where, like, you know that's going to come into play, but then it doesn't come into play.
Foreshadowing?
Nah, like something, Schrodinger's cat. It's not that either. It's somebody.
Oh, Chekhov's gun.
Chekhov's gun.
Yes.
This pen.
Chekhov's pen. Yeah.
Yeah, except it just stays under the couch. I thought for sure this pen was going to be the thing that, like, proved to him that his reality was not reality or something. Like, the pen should be there, but it's not, or something, you know?
It's a little murky because eventually we're going to find out that when he's digging around for his pen again, that's when he notices that his apartment has been tossed.
Right, but that hasn't to do with
the pen.
Yeah. See, what I thought upon just looking at this screenshot is that when he drops the pen, do you see that the pen is sort of like fizzied, like it's perhaps being hologrammed?
I think it's just in motion when you.
I know, but that would have been cool to, like, give us a breadcrumb up top, so that.
Ooh, that would be cool.
Anyway, you're welcome, Star Trek.
No, for sure, the penography was a little muddy, and that could have been just a hair tighter to tie that in better, because, like, when he discovers they toss his room, they did it sort of sloppily.
On purpose, right? Because they want him to think it was tossed, because they're trying to keep him under this suspicion, because why would they have hologram tossed his room? Or just the program played it out?
And actually, retroactively, yes, they wanted him to start getting paranoid, so that's why they did it muddy, because, again, O'Brien coming in to warning him is them.
Right.
So, yeah, I guess that is 100% part of it. All right.
Yeah, it's like when you like a murderer stages the place to make it look like it was ransacked,
right.
But they kind of do it, yeah.
Right, well, good to know. So Sloan greets him warmly. He apologized for making him miss the medical conference and reminds us the last time he went to a conference, Bashir was abducted and replaced and spent 5 weeks in a Dominion prison. He also casually asks Bashir about Bashir's work with the genetically enhanced patients. Bashir says, well, I think the fact that I'm genetically enhanced made them more open to accepting me. You spoke their language. Exactly. Bashir is surprised by how cordial the interview is, and Sloan casually breaks it off and almost immediately sends Bashir back to his quarters, even taking his breakfast order since the replicators had been shut off so they couldn't replicate a communication device. But, of course, he does the Matlock, and as he heads out, Doctor, one more thing. Yes. About those genetically enhanced patients of yours, did Starfleet Medical ask you to work with them, or did you volunteer? I volunteered. The music tells us to be very suspicious of Sloan. So Bashir goes back to his quarters, and his breakfast is delivered, and he's disappointed to see that his order was mixed with Worf's, and he gets a plate of worms to eat. It's interesting that when he looks at the card, it looks like the card is dirty. But I'm wondering if that was a bad... Yeah, you can see it there. It looks all smudged and dirty, which I don't know if that's a bad guess by the AI or something else. So people who did not watch the AI upscaled, is his card smudged and dirty? Good question.
Have you noticed, Keith, the AI has been different? I downloaded a whole new suite, like a much less upscaled version.
Oh!
This is one of the more modern, yeah.
I'm not watching it. So put that in the Dropbox.
It's in there. Yeah, I'd replace it.
I'll put it in mine.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, just kidding. The one, no, it's the one on my Plex is the new one.
I see. All right. Yeah. Well, throw that somewhere where I can download it, or let me download it from Plex.
Yep.
All right. Cool. But actually, that if the one I was watching was smudged and this one, which is less differently, it probably was smudged in real life. So I
that looked
wonder,
pretty legit. Yeah.
I wonder what the storytelling element. Is the idea that they dropped it?
I think the idea is that worms are crawling up on it. It's grok, right? It's grok.
It's grok.
Like they're dirty.
It's grok. Well, but they weren't in the card. I bet what this is to mean is that they knocked the cards off of both trays and just and picked them up off the ground and put them back. But they clearly didn't vacuum wherever they knocked it off, which is weird on Starfleet.
Or a props person printed that ish last minute, and that was what they had available. That card stock.
Also possible.
Yeah.
Also possible. So this is when Bashir realizes that everything in his quarters are slightly askew. They tossed his quarters when he was meeting with Sloan. He then gets a secret call from O'Brien. And O'Brien says, he grilled me for over 2 hours. 2 hours about what? About you. You're joking. Every single question was about you. And O'Brien is summoned to Sloan again, but this time with 2 guards.
So this brings up, I mean, I'm going to use the bumper, but so initially when I've kind of been thinking about this retroactively, I thought that the reason they wanted to have him under heightened suspicion and such, I guess as like a interrogation tactic. But I went back and I was like, oh, well, he's super smart, right? He's super intelligent. So I think that they messed up his apartment in order to divert suspicion from the fact that this could be a hologram. Because in order to perfectly replicate within the holodeck, they would have to have insight into how his cabin is expressed currently. But I imagine there's some sort of privacy protocol on the starship, so like they wouldn't know specifically.
You would think, but it's Section 31. They can do anything.
Okay, fair. But I was saying, well, but if they mess it up a little bit, then he wouldn't be able to tell, oh, that's out of place, that's out of place.
Ah, that's interesting.
But that would have to tie back, because if he's been in the holodeck since he was asleep, then there would have been that window of time where maybe he was distracted because he was going for the pen, so he didn't notice that things weren't where they should be.
It's an interesting theory. I would imagine that since they can beam him without being detected, they can walk around and take pictures of the apartment.
Yeah. Well, like, who hasn't broken into somebody's suite at this point?
I mean, he only has the teddy bear because Nog broke into the suite.
Remember Kira's buddies were just like hanging out in her apartment that one time?
Yeah, it's like easy peasy to just go and steal
Keith, what would you do, right? You come home from like going to the market or whatever, and I'm just on your couch.
To the market?
You don't go to the market? You don't go to the supermarket?
Get some goose eggs?
You don't go to the market. Nobody calls it the market? What do you call it? Giant?
The store.
Okay, cool. Sorry.
The grocery store.
God forbid I call it a grocery market.
The market sounds like we're in the opening of Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah.
There goes up Michael with his big...
What's the one thing?
Market.
What's the one thing the guy shouts? I love that on that.
I don't.
Bonjour.
Yeah, exactly. I forgot even what I was supposed to be saying here.
Let's move on. All right, there's suspicion.
Yeah. So, I think, what are they trying to do other than, like, your theory is interesting, but I think what they're trying to do is make him feel like they're on to him and that he's trapped so that he will reveal himself. He's like, we already know, so you might as well give it up.
Yeah.
So the next meeting with Sloan, the tone is very different. Sloan had removed his jacket to appear more casual in the first interview, but now is fully buttoned up and is cold and confrontational. Nice little costume detail here. It's not mentioned, but it's very clear he did that to sort of appear super cash. Sloan immediately begins interrogating Bashir about his time in the Dominion prison, probing for inconsistency and accusing him of secretly having met with a Vorta or changeling while he was in solitary. Martok said he was in solitary for 7 days, but Bashir remembers 5. All that I'm saying, Bashir says, is that he must have lost count of the days. He was under a lot of stress at the time. And you weren't? Human beings tend to be better at adapting to incarceration than Klingons. interesting little factoid there, but it kind of makes sense. Because Klingons are supposed to kill themselves when they're captured. Sloan says, let's move on to the matter of your escape from the camp. I'll quote from your report. We constructed a transmitter using components from the barracks life support system. We used it to contact our runabout and beam ourselves out of the camp. Forgive me, Doctor, but that sounds a little hard to believe. That's what happened. Why would the Dominion leave your runabout orbiting the camp unattended? And Bashir said they didn't expect us to be able to contact it. Why not? They left you everything you needed to build a transmitter. Isn't that more plausible that the Dominion wanted you to escape? Why? For what reason? So that you could start working for them. So Sloan, if you remember, when we watched that episode, why was the runabout still orbiting all by itself as a wormhole in that episode? And Sloan here addresses that wormhole directly. We don't really get an answer, but at least the show realizes that that was a wormhole. It's not really well explained, but it certainly is a great piece of longer-term storytelling to rehash these beats here, because I think one of the effective things about this episode, and one of why it having been Bashir is so great, because there's some plausibility for these theories. And Bashir does a lot of things, and Sisko's going to talk about it. Just like, yeah, maybe there's a reason to be suspicious. Bashir, of course, is offended by this, but Sloan posits that perhaps he's been brainwashed, and he doesn't even know he's a spy. What could be more perfect? There's no chance of your getting caught because you don't realize you're working for them. Then, when they're ready to debrief you, all they have to do is trigger your memory. Manchurian candidate, obviously. Bashir denies it, and Sloan gets more angry. I've had enough with your lies, Doctor. You think you're smarter than the rest of us, don't you? Smarter than the millions of brave men and women who are putting their lives on the line for the Federation. You want to do things the hard way? Fine. Then I'm going to get the truth out of you, and when I'm done, I'm going to take whatever's left of you and lock it away. So Bashir is hauled through the promenade in shackles. Our heroes object to this treatment, but it falls on deaf ears. But at least Quark gets a line.
This is probably a larger episode wormhole, and maybe not wormhole at all. More of a question, but I'm gonna. I just like pressing the button. Can I be honest?
You just like to hear your performance of wormholes.
So this whole I don't like you because you're enhanced and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Is it legit? Is it part of the reason we're going through this whole song and dance, or is it just to see how he operates under stress because he wants to recruit him, right? Is this we're really trying to find out if he did these things, or is this whole thing just a recruitment tactic? Is it both? Is it one or the other? Because I have thoughts.
Okay, you go first, and I'll wait.
Because they're in real time. That's why.
Yeah.
If there is suspicion that he is actually Manchurian candidate, then everything they do to him, in my opinion, tell me if I'm wrong, up until he meets Wei-Yun is superfluous, right? Just have him wake up in Wei-Yun's condo apartment and try to do the sort of bring him back, right? Have Wei-Yun do the whole re-bring out the candidate, because them trying to torture it out of him, if the Manchurian candidate thing is legit, he needs the trigger from Wei-Yun anyway, right? This is all bullshit. If it's just we're putting him through all of this to see how he, as a Starfleet officer, responds. Can he keep a secret? Can he do this? Can he handle pressure? Can he handle suspicion? All that stuff, then it all makes sense. But if it's both, hey baby, how you doing, cadet? My sweetheart. That I guess that's my point. Then it seems this attacking him for being altered seems to be a song and dance because it doesn't have any relevance.
Okay, I'll fix it this way. I take it as
good girl.
They're legitimately they're legitimately concerned that he might be a spy. I take it that way. And then when they realize he's not, they're like, wow, this person would be perfect for this, because all the skills that made us suspicious are also the skills that could make him useful. So I think them doing the slow burn song and dance is to, you want to reveal him, increase your chances of doing it. Their guess of what's happening is a guess, right? They're thinking like, maybe it's this, so that if they went straight to it, they risked exactly what happens, i.e. Bashir figures out it's not true, right? And that they need to work him in, they need to boil the frog, to get to the point where he is susceptible to being open to this, because how do they know it was Wei Yun who was the contact? How do they know it was whatever? So like, you start as close to reality as possible and slowly take more and more risks if it doesn't work, I think is where they're coming from.
Okay. All right, I like that.
Yeah, all right, well, look at me. So, Bashir, so he's hauled to the promenade, and they arrive in the brig, and Odo has also been confined to quarters. Sloane's guards are angry and treat Bashir like a traitor who helped kill their friends, and he is locked away in a cell. In Act 3, Sisko forces his way into a private conversation with Bashir. He's found out that Sloane's son was killed by the Dominion, and he blames Bashir. Sloane emerges from the shadows and agrees this is exactly what he thinks, and he and Sisko face off. Sisko demands that he be a part of all interrogations moving forward. So we cut to the next interrogation session, which seems to have been going on for some time. Sloane grills him about Bashir's trying to help the Jem'Hadar break their addiction to the white in another previous episode. Sisko says this is irrelevant. You're talking about an incident that took place before Dr. Bashir allegedly became a Dominion agent. It's not irrelevant, Captain. If anything, it shows that he was already sympathetic to the Dominion. Then they move on to the incident with the genetically enhanced folks, and he asks a really fair question about why they were given access to Starfleet troop movements, and also the fact that they literally tried to hand the Dominion the war. This episode is so great from a showrunner perspective, because they're, if not closing, addressing all the wormholes that we had about these previous episodes.
Although I thought what was really interesting in this beat for me was the first time, and I didn't figure anything out, but it was the first time that someone behaved in a way that I thought was somewhat out of character. And I think Sisko here does like a beat change when he confronts him with, you didn't agree with his findings. I felt like Sisko of all people would have added the context, right? Only because my choice is to fight to the end. That's not to say his findings of all these lives being lost weren't accurate. They just, and he doesn't add that context, and I found it interesting. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Which in turn, he's programmed to behave that way, so it makes sense.
Right. What he does say is, I won't deny that Bashir has made some questionable decisions in his career, but you're a long way from convincing me he's a traitor. So far, your case is based on circumstantial evidence and speculation. What other kind of case can I make against a man who's covered his tracks so well? That's a circular argument, and you know it. Captain, if Dr. Bashir had been involved in one or two questionable incidents, I can understand how you might be able to dismiss them, but the sheer number of incidents form a pattern of behavior that can't be ignored. And I think it's such a great couplet there, because it is a circular argument, right? Mm-hmm. You're trying to prove a negative, which you can't do. And at the other hand, he's right. Mm-hmm. It's not just one or two things. It's a bunch of different things. Now, of course, you could argue that all of it is based on him being a doctor, right? A doctor, as opposed to any other type, your job is to treat everybody. That is the physician's oath. It is, your job is to heal people, not heal one side or the other.
Right. And
so they are different than any other category.
And in the metaverse, or in the like sort of meta arc, he's also this whole interrogation and admitting the flaws in his argument and his sort of one-sidedness and his circular logic creates the real picture. right? The illusion that they're trying to also create. It's operating on a lot of levels effectively.
Well, and that's the thing. It's convincing, right? At this point, when you were watching the episode, I'm assuming you had not figured out that this wasn't real.
Right.
So, it's all about building credibility. So, later, so Sloan is convincing that suspicion is at least reasonable, and he points out that he's been lying about his genetic enhancements Bashir had, only told because he'd been found out. Later in the holding cell, even Cisco is starting to question. I know you're not lying, Julian, but as a doctor, isn't it within the realm of medical possibility that the Dominion did recruit you and that you have blocked it out of your memory? Fair question. I mean, and I wonder, because we know retroactively this is a programmed Cisco, what would actual Cisco's reaction be here? Because I don't think this is an unreasonable point of view for real Cisco to have. Curious. Later still, Sloan enters. He's been taken to, Bashir is going to be taken to a starbase for further questioning. He's going to spend the rest of the war in a maximum security cell unless he confesses. But then, Bashir is beamed out and onto a Dominion ship where he is greeted by Wayoon, who says, "Welcome home."
Good screenshot for the splash, Keith.
Oh, so fun. So, in Act 4...
Wayoon, you're coming my way, buddy. I got my pre-order in.
Oh, I'm excited about that. So Bashir says, why did you bring me here? What choice did I have? Wayoon says. Starfleet discovered you were working for us. I'm not working for you. I'm not a Dominion spy. Ah, you actually believe that, don't you? That's why you're such a good operative.
Your Wayoon's getting good, Keith.
Oh, yeah. Here we go again. These little conversations of ours always follow the same pattern. You start out confused, then you get angry, then you deny everything until finally the walls in your mind break down and you accept the truth. Wayoon tells him that they turned Bashir with the same logic that turned the genetically modified Super Friends, that the Federation had no chance and he could save billions of lives by surrendering.
Keith, I think it's a good time before we move too much further. Every once in a while, folks, there's like a big reveal on the show, and it turns out I didn't know it until I watched back, but the way I watch television is very demonstrative. So this is a screen cap from our watch along this week. You can join these live for as low as $1. Patreon.com/KandM. Yeah, or more. We do stress that part, but it starts there. But this is just to give you just a glimpse. This was
Mike's face.
This exact scene, yeah.
I think that's the appropriate face.
Yeah, a lot of storytelling possibilities had this been true.
Right? I mean, do we know that it's not true?
Even that it's a possibility is crazy.
I mean, the fact that it is plausible enough.
Well, I often thought, right, and if I'm onto something, stop. But I'm just saying, I've often thought, way back to that episode. Remember that episode where we have O'Brien in jail, but he's not really in jail. They just okay, so we have that. I forget who did that to us. What race that was?
It was a rando race.
But we also have that episode where the founders kind of brain danced us all, right?
Right. Beginning of season 3. Yeah.
Why couldn't they take one of us? Couldn't they have done the same thing if baddies got us, right? Not Section 31, which I guess aren't not baddies. They're more gray area. But, and just like implant all these memories of like stuff that happened or didn't happen. Couldn't they just like totally rewrite some and make us think that somebody betrayed us so that we like a great false flag could be done there. Operation.
Yeah. And they, Bashir's already been replaced.
Right.
Crazy.
Oh, right. We did sort of do that.
Yeah. So Wayoon says, "Traitor, hero, those are just words. Oh, your friends on Deep Space Nine may vilify you, but history will judge you to be a great man, a visionary who helped bring about an end to one of the most devastating wars the galaxy has ever seen." It Sounds like Trump's rationale for abandoning Ukraine. He gives Bashir his buttered scones and jam, and they looked so good. I need to find a way to get some scones today. I don't know why. I'm all excited about
Are we
it.
to believe that they thought, Section 31 for some reason thought that scones and jam was the Manchurian Candidate trigger?
Well, they obviously knew that was his regular breakfast.
They were like, it's the scones.
But also, like, they're able to adapt, right? So they're watching this as it happens. Bashir orders scones and jam that morning, so they write it into the story as they're moving forward. Their AI is good enough to keep up. Bashir gets up and yells. He denies being a spy. Then he realizes something. Wait a minute. You're both trying to convince me of the same lie. How could that be, unless you're working together? Then their AI adapts immediately.
Yeah, they're like, get him out.
Get him out! And their ship is attacked by the Defiant, and Bashir is rescued by Worf and Kira. He's beamed back onto the bridge, and Sisko asks what the Dominion wanted. But now everybody is accusing him of being a spy.
Yeah, getting sloppy now.
Getting a little sloppy? Well, it's because they're storytelling. They wrote the story, and now they're improvising.
No, it's the Wizard of Oz. Once the curtain's pulled, and he's like just doing levers and wheels, and he's like, pay no attention.
It's exactly what's happening. So even O'Brien accuses him, who swats him away. His shoulder should have been hurt, but is not. And Bashir, that confirms Bashir has figured out the lie. These aren't our heroes. This isn't real. And the holodeck is turned off, revealing Sloane there in a black leather suit. Yeah. You're right, Doctor. None of this is real, but I am. And
He's auditioning for the revival of Little Shop of Horrors as?
The dentist, of course. Yeah, I mean, well, there's also...
Tuxie! Tuxie!
Oh, my God. Tux. I know we're on a clock, buddy. We're not quite there yet. Keep your pants on.
Yeah, every button.
Every button.
Somebody listening in their car just friggin' crashed.
Just drove.
Hey,
please, guys, when you're listening to us, hands on 10 and 2, please. So...
No bonobo play.
No. Oh, gross. So, in Act 5, Sloane makes Bashir remove a small chip from behind his ear. It's a brain scanner. And Bashir says, you've recorded my neuroelectric responses? That's correct, and I'd like to check the findings in order to confirm what I already believe, that you're an innocent man. He does check the chip and confirms that Bashir has not been lying. So we find out that they beamed Bashir out of his quarters while he was sleeping, and the whole time since they beamed him out, this has been a simulation. And Sloane explains that he is part of Section 31, Starfleet's super secret police, the CIA, that we didn't know about. And this, Mike, is the first introduction of Section 31.
Which somebody in the chat told me was the name of the movie, which the Michelle Yeoh movie, and that's when it all makes sense. Yeah.
That's right.
But then they said that there's no similarity.
If they had any relation to each other, that would have been great.
Oh, it would have been so cool. Are you kidding me? This sounds, because at least from my limited experience, which is just this, it's kind of awesome.
It is awesome if you retain what it's supposed to be and not just make it a Guardians of the Galaxy ripoff. Which I love. I love Guardians of the Galaxy. And to be just
that sounds way too whimsical, however.
So whimsical. Like, Section 31 is a fun little movie. It's just not a Star Trek movie at all. It's utterly detached from anything
So I can
Star
watch
Trek.
it?
Yeah, you can totally watch it.
Should I, though?
Well, I mean...
I like Michelle Yeoh.
As a fun sci-fi romp, sure.
Okay.
It's just not Star Trek.
Yeah.
It's just not Star Trek. Anyway, so Sloane says, we search out and identify potential dangers to the Federation. That is the purpose of Section 31. And once identified, we deal with them. How? Quietly. So if I turned out to be a Dominion agent, what would have happened to me? We wouldn't be standing here having this conversation. We don't submit reports or ask for approval for specific operations, if that's what you mean. We're an autonomous department. Section 31 was part of the original Starfleet Charter. That's 200 years ago. Are you telling me you've been operating on your own ever since without specific orders, accountable to nobody but yourselves? You make it sound so ominous. Great line. Then Sloan tries to recruit Bashir. You're intelligent, resourceful, and you've always been fascinated by covert operations. Why else would you spend so much time in Quark's holosuite playing a spy? We're on the same team. We believe in the same principles that every other Federation citizen holds dear. But you violate those principles as a matter of course, in order to protect them. I'm sorry, but the ends don't always justify the means. Really? How many lives do you suppose you've saved in your medical career? Hundreds? Thousands? Do you suppose that those people give a damn that you lied to get into Starfleet Medical? I doubt it. We deal with threats to the Federation that jeopardize its very survival. If you knew how many lives we'd saved, I think you'd agree that the ends do justify the means. And it is really interesting to think about. This episode aired 3 years before 9/11, and Dick Cheney becoming our national Sloan.
Well, Keith,
really interesting.
I'm going to pitch you. You know what? Let's finish, then I'll pitch you at the end. Okay.
So they then knock Bashir out and return him to the station. Their entire presence was untraceable. And so our heroes only have Bashir's word that any of this even happened. There's no record of Sloan. However, Starfleet refuses to confirm or deny the existence of Section 31. And Bashir says, is it possible that the Federation could condone this type of activity? And Odo says, personally, I find it hard to believe they wouldn't. Every other great power has a unit like Section 31. The Romulans have the Tal Shiar, the Cardassians have the Obsidian Order. None of them have answers, but Sisko tells Bashir, next time they try to recruit him, say yes.
Oh, opening door to episodes I want to see.
What a fantastic ... And the music ends in a ... So
a visual
fun.
fermata, if you will. Okay, a story fermata, if you will.
Indeed. Let's do our after show. Oh,
what a bummer. Oh, AlamarEmmys, there was more. AlamarEmmys, it's AlamarEmmys time.
10 and 2, folks. 10 and 2. Look both ways, check your mirrors.
Oh man, I knew at some point I would forget that was going to happen. And that's what happened.
It's only the second time. It's all it took.
Keith, let me start. Let's just jump into it. Let me start. Okay. Let's assume that the NSA and the CIA are not Section 31, because we know about them, right? And by its very definition, we wouldn't know about them. So, we talk about after 9/11, and we talk about we often, just to test our very obvious politic, right?
Right, sure.
Well, right now,
our
Keith,
soft-shelled liberals
our belief. Now, let me put it on you. Your belief, Keith.
Okay, let's hear it. Bring it.
The very fabric of our democracy is being tested, torn at the seams.
Yeah.
Let's say that somewhere there is an agency that was put in by the founders that
dude, you're gonna get me
have oversight, right? that would clearly, if they're that might be hopefully protect us from the things that are being wrought. Would you sanction that, Keith? Would you be okay with that if they were going to protect us from what Trump is to wrought? Or would you say that? Or would you say that that's a step too far?
You're going to saying that based on how I answer next week, you're going to have a different co-host because I'm going to be in Guantanamo.
No, I'm just the principle of, because I think that's the question being asked, right? Is that we want to believe that everything is up front and on the page, and we're voting for what's happening, or that but should there be that
when the institutional guardrails fall? which they have, is there another institution we don't know about who is our backstop?
Or would we hope that there would be?
More importantly,
Yes.
should there be?
Right. That's the question here. We're being asked. And do you want to be on that? Do you want to be on the team? I guess is the final question here.
Do I want to say what I think on the internet?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
I mean,
I think it would be silly of us to believe that there isn't, and I don't say it's fighting for good, that there aren't multiple, because let's look at just our defense budget,
sure.
right? This black hole of billions of dollars.
There are black ops and like on levels that we have no idea. I mean, like we didn't know what SEAL Team 6 was, then we did, which means there's definitely a SEAL Team 7 or 8.
Which then, okay, then we flip the other question then, so I'll divert for you. That being said, how much of what we see in the decorum of our politic, from voting to all of the congressional things we see, is holodeck? Mike dropping bombs.
No, I don't think it is. Because if it were, it wouldn't be so disastrously incompetent.
Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, right. They do as good a job setting up
They would be telling a story other than like people walking around in a circle shitting themselves.
Yeah.
So like there's no story. There's no story other than like, wow, this is a mess.
Mm-hmm.
You know, no, Russia wants us to think it's all a mess, select all, delete, so they can replace. But I don't think we're creating that mess. So the answer to your logical question is like,
no thanks.
Should somebody? Not answering that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about our best moment.
I'll be honest with you. I've hoped a couple times. I've hoped that the cavalry's coming, and
it's there. I tell you what, all of the courses of action, from the most extreme to the most subtle, come with really complex pluses and minuses.
Yeah.
So there it is. All right, let's talk about our best moment.
And there you go. That's it.
The reveal of Weyoun.
Yeah, because they had me. They like everything they had set up for Bashir worked on me, and I was like, oh ish, what balls to have him be a secret op. But I'm glad the way it played out. I mean, you could argue that it's like a whitewashing back to the status quo as they always do, and not having there any actual. But they don't wipe his memory, and so they are no longer completely shadow, right? So there are consequences, and maybe we're setting up a go play spy and be a mole. So I don't know. I really enjoyed that. I mean,
look, it's
a fulcrum.
It is. It's not resetting to the status quo. The existence, the mere fact that Section 31 exists is a universe-changing thing, and I think. For me, the reveal is the reveal of, or the best moment is the reveal of Section 31, because it is such an interesting idea, as well as an opportunity to launch forward. And, it is one of the biggest legacies of Deep Space Nine, having effects on everything moving forward. And so, like, it's huge. So I think that is the best moment. And I think. It's not a moment, but I just want to shout out, I think Bill Sadler's performance here is riveting. Mm-hmm. From top to bottom, he does a fantastic job. And if you didn't have an actor with that level of interesting and that caliber, the very idea of Section 31 would have been neutered forever.
Right.
He's able to carry the menace and the intrigue of that, and that makes it really interesting. Let's hand out some stem bolts.
You get some stem bolts. Hell yeah, they are self-sealing. Here are some stem bolts for you.
So with kind of the exception of the Orion Syndicate, every shadow op organization that we've kind of really come across have been really interesting in that so easy to make them all just like, oh, these are the baddies for this is the super baddies for this organ or for this sect, this is the super baddies for them. Every one of them has been made and shown to be very much in belief that they are doing good,
Yep.
right? Not, not just mustache twirling baddies, but even I'm sorry, I can't forget, who was Garrick worked for originally?
Obsidian Order.
The Obsidian Order. Even them, who, like, even the name brandishes ideas of darkness and the KGB, really. We have that whole episode of Sympathy where they make Kira Cardassian, and they make us feel for the leader of the whole thing, and everyone believes they're doing the right thing for the right reasons. And that's awesome. And I think this episode highlights it again. Even though they set up the whole first half making him super baddie, right? He's the Inquisitor. And then the end flip is like, nah, we got to protect, and sometimes you got to go super deep, and we've been from the beginning, and you'd be a great asset. And you're like, oh.
It's not black and white.
It's not black and white. And
At all.
as I was pitching to Keith, depending on where you sit viewing what's happening and how the outcome affects you and yours, you might hope that you might scoff at it, but I'll tell you what, you also might be the person like 10 minutes after 9/11 being like, read my emails, just don't let this happen again, right? Time and a place. People can be taken advantage of at a time and a place and convinced of anything. So
it's terrifying because, like, even I, the soft-shelled liberal, the person just like rule of law and Geneva, all that kind of stuff. Does the fact that our government has the ability to disappear anyone in the universe that they want to, kind of in about half an hour, does that, like, am I sort of glad that we have that tool?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm glad we don't use it, but, like, would I want us to not have that tool? I don't know.
It's a nuclear weapon, right? Blow it out to its farthest extent, right? Well,
Yeah.
Well, if we gotta have it, but we don't want to use it because mutual assured discretion. Well, we need that mutual assurity, and so that nobody uses it. And you're like, well, this is a weird game we're playing.
Well, it's highly dangerous. It's also a deterrent. It keeps us safe. It makes things more dangerous. It makes who we give the button to very important.
Additionally, I've often been heard saying, "Who cares if so and so's reading my, like I have nothing to hide. Like, you read my emails, whatever. Who cares?" But and that is true, right? However, you also tell me that I have the right to privacy, and that one of my fundamental rights as a human being is the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that freedom of speech, and all those things. But if there are caveats and fine print and stars based on those things.
Well, and it comes down, like, giving up that right to privacy or whatever is fundamentally based on trusting who's reading your emails.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason it needs to be a right is because the person who's reading your email is always going to be changing, and you can't always trust them. You can't always trust that they're doing it with good intentions or playing fairly, so that, am I worried about Obama reading my emails? No. Keith, this is terribly boring.
That's a good point you bring up.
Now.
Sorry, I've been so deep today, but I had one of my nieces asked me a really interesting question. Something along the lines of I'll be vague, along the lines of why I don't believe in God, and I said to her,
why she doesn't, or why
I don't. And it recalled to me that my sister, I think, because they are practicing currently, I think they often look at my sort of lack of a specific religion or, questioning nature to be the absence of faith or the absence of belief or whatnot. I am not an atheist, but I would consider myself an agnostic, but the definition is not important, I think. And I did kick back against that a little bit because I think just giving somebody a label that they didn't is not particularly right, but that's not the point. It made me think about it. And one of the things is, and I want to, is often I feel anti-religious, and I'm not against religion, I'm against blind faith. And here's why. I think you need to question anyone who believes something in their life without question. And I think that as human beings, it's important for us, be it our politics, be it our ideals, be it our morals, be it You should always be questioning, re-examining, and reaffirming, and it's okay to change your mind, right? I think some people become stuck and obstinate in their views because they've had them since they were little, or their parents gave them to, or some sort of ritual, and to never question it, and to never grow, and to never re-examine or to change is, in my opinion, very nearsighted and leads to probably the majority of our wars and conflicts that we have.
No doubt.
So this episode is great in that it does what we just did, right? Well, okay. Should we have these organizations? You know, and is that person who, keep going back to it, but 5 minutes after 9/11 said, I don't care, let the government sign off and do all these things, are they beholden to still believe that? Are they now allowed to question the government? Because I think what happens a lot in oppressive regimes is they say, oh, well, hey, you said this when you voted for this or when you did that, and that locks you into some position, and I think that is dangerous, and I think it's disingenuous.
It's just incredibly ripe for abuse.
Yes. Ultimately, I don't know where I'm going. All these questions and more were posed in this episode. Additionally, I think it was a fun adventure. I think it had me hook, line, and sinker. I think it poses an incredible arc that I don't know that we're going to go down. We don't really have a lot of time, but would be awesome. Does everything right. I'm giving it an A, but I'm giving it what I call an upper Marion A, Keith, because we didn't just go by 90s and A. To get an A in my high school, you had to have a 93, and thus 93 self-sealing stem bolts to be saved and deleted later.
Yeah. Yeah, boy. I mean, I think all of that is true and really interesting. And, you know, what I wrote down while you were talking is that, like, for me, all belief, right, scientific, faith, moral, relationship, whatever it is, needs to be evidence-based and needs to be continually taking in information. Because in order to be evidence-based, you have to be continually taking in new evidence. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a really fun romp of an episode in some ways. You know, I love the twist, pull the rug out from underneath you. I love the sort of foreshadowing that they do that we're not in the real world. Star Trek rules, or if you're not in the real world, there are no establishing shots of the station or the ship. I love the fact that there is no B story. We are here, we're in this world the whole time. I think the performances are great. I think Alex Siddig's performance is great. You know, again, seeing the tremendous growth in him as a performer from, you know, the first couple of seasons, and the character is so much more interesting. I love the fact that we are using our lore for our advantage. You know, using the holes, the plot holes in our previous episodes as assets, taking our liabilities, making them assets in this episode. That's just such good world building. And it really, like, so that Sloane's questioning Bashir, it makes sense. We know Bashir, we know it's not true, but it makes perfect sense why he would feel that way. And that is what makes this episode satisfying, is because everybody is operating logically. Bashir's operating logically, Sloane is operating logically, even fake Cisco is operating logically within this sort of, you know, fantasy that we're in. And I think that's really fascinating. And so, Section 31, as a concept, as an idea within Star Trek, it's logical too. And I think what Deep Space Nine does that the Section 31 movie doesn't do is it feels the weight of that. Like, you know, it is logical for us to have a nuke, but we don't feel great about it. And it's got a lot of weight and it's got a lot of heft to it. And the movie is like, yippee, we're just doing this for the hell of it. You know, we're doing it because it's kind of fun to be the baddies, as opposed to, like, this is a necessary evil, and I am participating in this not because it's fun, not because I'm evil, but because it feels necessary to me. And that's where it still feels Star Trek. That's why it's still Star Trek, because it is still logical. It is still, you know, it's dark, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist in a world with stakes and weight and logic and ideals. As opposed to just, like, you know, just effing around. And that's why it That's why I like it. That's why I like this wrinkle. I like this layer, and it feels, if not as the same Star Trek as Picard, definitely Deep Space Nine. And so I love it. I love the idea. It's fun. It's interesting. The performances are great. I think it is informed and informative, informed by the world we have built up to this point. It is informative of where we are going. It's important. It's interesting. Gets 94 self-sealing stem bolts from me. Super, super fun. So yeah, next week in the pale moonlight.
Ooh, okay.
So yeah, we're gonna do that. I'm gonna try to hop in the watch along, and probably just do the same thing I did in some of this. I'm gonna block. I'll chat with the folks. So Mike,
Yeah.
can stay
We were
locked
gonna
in.
do that Tuesday was my initial goal, but looks like there might be a funeral I have to go to. Long story. So
Oh shit.
we'll be up on the. I will definitely let you guys know with more than an hour to spare, which is what I've generally been doing. It's kind of like a pop-up shop at Christmas, but
Yeah, this one we should probably plan ahead
Yeah,
because
we'll plan
I
ahead.
imagine we'll probably have a pretty
So-
good crowd.
there does exist a universe, Keith, or maybe we do it later in the week. Okay, well, we'll talk.
That's fine.
What's going on? Why are all the buttons pressing?
I don't know. I think the important thing is that we give this episode the time and space and air
Yes.
it needs than it happens on a particular day
Cool, great.
or
Sounds
particular
good.
time.
Cool, we'll
So,
talk about it.
all right, thank you all for watching our little Inquisition. Hopefully, I'll be back next week and not in Guantanamo because Mike put me there. Till then, this has been Keith and Mike. Watch Deep Space Nine.
Somewhere Keith is still deflecting.
Thank you for watching K&M Entertainment. If you enjoyed our particular brand of nonsense, please like and subscribe. Or become one of our patrons at patreon.com/KNM.
It's non-sexual genital rubbing.
Would you kind of start over?